Please welcome Golden State Warriors Chief Financial Officer Jennifer Caboquinto, Socos Lab founder and chair Vivian Ming, Mayor of the City of Oakland Libby Schaff, and Accenture Digital's Group Chief Executive Mike Sutcliffe.
Well, hello, everyone. You know, we have the amazing opportunity at Accenture every day to work across industries, across geographies, and to meet people in the daily course of our work that are inspirational. We've got a fantastic panel today of people that are right here in our backyard doing groundbreaking work in male-dominated fields. So pathfinders who've been willing to follow their passion, do something inspirational, and achieve something that's impressive. We thought what we would do today was we'd just start talking with each of you about what it is you're doing and how you think about diversity, inclusion, bringing what you do, your passion, into the world. And as you know, we've got a fantastic relationship with the Warriors. I'm sure there are plenty of Warriors fans in here today. Woo! So let's start with Jennifer. Jennifer, the Chief Financial Officer of the Warriors. You grew up in a family with lots of boys. You're in a male-dominated field. Tell us how you got started. How did it impact how you thought about getting into the business, and why did you choose it?
Sure. You know, sports found me, but I did grow up with 4 brothers. I have 2 older brothers, 2 younger brothers. I'm right in the middle, and we're 1 year, like we were born successively. And so I've always said to people, I've been competing with boys my entire life. And I grew up in Brooklyn. And so I think that combination really thickens your skin. And I think it gave me a perspective that I don't think about being a woman in a man's world. I am just who I am. I tell people all the time, you can't change, like, don't focus on things you can't change. I can't change the fact that I'm a girl. But like I said, I think having that perspective, being raised that way, I think really influences sort of how I approach the role. And this is my first sports job, but I don't view it as anything more than just another job.
And fantastic to be able to get started that way. So Vivian, I've got a daughter who is passionate about neuroscience, psychology, artificial learning. You're an icon in the field. You've been able to watch the field mature over time, and you've made a fantastic impact. How did you get started?
Oh, gosh. I started professionally as a theoretical neuroscientist, most recently at the Redwood Center for Theoretical Neuroscience at UC Berkeley. So we've got a whole sort of East Bay maniacs panel going on here, which is awesome. And about 10 years ago, I made the rather terrible decision to start my first company. Terrible just because academia is so wonderful and I love science, but my wife, who is now the head of research for the San Francisco school system, and myself, we just had an idea and we thought, is this an experiment or is this a company? And so I threw this term out there, theoretical neuroscience. We would study artificial intelligence to better understand the brain. We'd study the brain to better understand artificial intelligence. And yeah, you know, when I first showed up at the Redwood Center, it was 40 guys and 1 woman. And for anyone that doesn't know my backstory, that woman wasn't me. I was still a man at the time. And it's one of those fields where you are seen as successful or not because of your raw intellectual power. And fields like that, actually, there's a lot of research on it, tend to be dominated by men, not because women don't have it, but it's part of how bias pervades these fields. And I always hated that. So in fact, one of the first things we did when we started our company was to create a totally different environment, somewhere where brilliant people weren't seen as brilliant because they were the loudest person in the room, but rather because we could actually invent something that made a meaningful change in someone's life. And that was how we decided, you know, did you make someone's life better or not? If you did, wow. That is the sign that you're amazing.
Interesting. And obviously you've done startups as part of the community here. So you've seen that lens.
I've seen both sides. So as I said, I transitioned when I was a scientist. And if you're curious, is it really different for men and women? So almost literally the day I showed up as me, it was the last day anyone ever asked me a math question. It just overnight. So, I'd invented algorithms. I used to have people come to me and so excited about new algorithms and can you give me the feedback? Just no more. None of that anymore. And
Amazing.
when I started my first company, it was pulling teeth. I was me by then, and it was amazing. I literally had VCs, they'd pat me on the head. They'd tell me, oh, your idea is so nice, so cute. You should be so proud of what you've done. And, at the time, it was my first run through, and I thought, wow, this is great. They love me. I didn't really pick up. I mean, they loved me the way I was just in Prague, and on my flight home, someone was sitting in my seat, and I said, I think you might be sitting in my seat. And he looks at the ticket and said, oh, I'm so sorry. Would you like to sit in my lap? I was like, what? I mean, there are times where I'd love to just say, you probably don't know my personal history, but but you go through these things, and it's amazing that find that you can roll in there with a couple of PhDs and amazing technology that everybody loves and no one questions, and they still pat you on the head. And so if anyone, it's a pretty savvy room here, but if you ever really wondered whether it was different, it's different. And clearly this is the right choice for me, but life was too easy. I wanted to do it going backwards.
Well said. So thank you for that. Now, Libby, you started getting involved in changing the community as a Girl Scout. You got involved early, and then you decided to go into politics, and that's a fairly male-dominated field. You had surprising early success, and still continue on that path. So, what made you decide to follow that journey?
Like many things in life, it was somewhat accidental. But the interesting thing about research around women going into politics is they need to be asked. Men wake up in the morning and I mean, there really is research that shows this. If there's a job description and the man has 5 out of the 10 qualities, he assumes he'll be able to learn the other 5 on the job. Whereas if the woman has 9 out of the 10, she's like, oh, maybe I can't apply. I'm not qualified. So ladies, we've got to get over that. For me, it was really helpful to do a program called Emerge California. So if any of you are thinking, yeah, good, clap it up for Emerge. If any of you, and it's a Democratic program, I'm not sure if there's a Republican counterpart, but if any of you are interested in seeking your first office, it is so incredible to do it in a community of support. And I'll say, as a woman, the thing that surprised me was not the overt, you're a woman, you shouldn't do this, but, oh, you're a bad mother. You'll regret running for office because your children are so young. And that I think some of these tangential discriminations are things that we really need to talk about, because the idea that women have all these additional responsibilities in the home, to their partners, to their kids. Yep. That is the second reason that research has shown fewer women actually put themselves out there and run for office. It's out of guilt about their other responsibilities. I'm very blessed to have a wonderful partner in life who happens to be a husband. In fact, today's his 50th birthday, so he's on my mind.
Happy birthday.
And, I have to say it got to me at one point when I was running for my first office. And, I got into bed one night and I started crying. And I said, maybe I should take one night off of knocking on doors and have dinner, with you and the kids. And he said, absolutely not. You are a great mother. Part of being a great mother is setting an example, of having a goal, and this is the other thing about politics. It's not so much I've ever wanted to be a politician or be an elected official. I've always wanted to make my community better. And so to kind of have that knowledge and confidence about what you want to do more than what you want to be is also very guiding, very centering, and it can also be liberating sometimes. But that, I mean, I think that's part of my journey into politics was one, knowing that I loved my community, and also having a support system that told me I did not have to feel guilty about having young children while I did it.
So obviously we've seen in the last 6 months even an influx of women who have started to run for political office.
That's right.
That's
Thank
fantastic.
you. Thank
Absolutely. What can you tell us about what you're seeing? Are you seeing through the Emerge program or other sources a difference in terms of how people are getting involved and the support structures that are in place to help them get there?
Yeah, I was cautioned to not be political, although why would you have a politician be on your panel if you didn't want her to be a little bit political? Let me just say we're in a moment right now where a lot of people are having very strong feelings about the direction that government is going in or not going in. Mm-hmm. And no matter what side of that debate you're on, I think it's woken people up that you shouldn't just stay on the sidelines and whine, that you have a role to play. So I'm very excited about that.
That's fantastic. Well, we obviously, working across industries, always ask the question, can we actually improve the way the world works and lives? And what we've heard from you already on the panel is each of you are doing that, as you said, following a passion, not trying to become something, but trying to do something.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll say is like, celebrate feeling uncomfortable. I always say that if I'm the only one who looks like me in a room, and trust me, I've negotiated with the NFL. I was the only one who looked like me in the room. That does feel uncomfortable, but that means that's probably the most important room for you to be in. And so celebrate that discomfort. As a woman in a position of power, I've been asked, as part of this Me Too movement, to share some kind of personal, difficult stories. But because I have the privilege of being believed when I tell those stories, it is really my responsibility to be uncomfortable on behalf of particularly the women that won't be believed when they share theirs.
So, Jennifer, I heard you negotiating with the NBA earlier this morning on the phone, and fairly terse comments, I think I heard.
I am from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And now you're from Oakland.
And now I'm from Oakland.
That's right. Now from Oakland.
Exactly right.
So when you first showed up to interview with the Warriors, you interviewed for the CFO job, and they offered you something else.
I did. I interviewed. I got a call they said, are you interested in joining the Golden State Warriors? And so the role was Chief Financial Officer. I was in LA. I was already the CFO of Universal Studios Hollywood. And I said, sure, and I went through this process. I remember my first interview was the day after the Warriors got knocked out of the playoffs in 2013. And I thought, this isn't good. Like, you probably don't want to start your interview process after a team loses. But it was great, but it was a long process. I had an interview with, senior staff, the president, and then the ownership group. And at the end of a several month process, they said, well, we love you. We're going to make you an offer. We'd love to bring you on as the vice president of finance. And I said, well, what the hell is that? I was like, no, we must have the wrong person. We were interviewing for the chief financial officer. And, it was an awkward conversation. HR, well, we love you, and we think, we'd love to bring you on board. And I said, why? Why is there this change? And, the answer was a little vague. It was, well, we thought we were going to think about a Silicon Valley type CFO, and you're not that. And I go, well, I wasn't that the day you called me either. So that hasn't changed in 3 months. And so I said, thank you, but no, thank you. And I think it was, for me, it was really important. You don't work your career to get to a place, and no matter what organization it is, be willing to take a step back, especially when you've earned it. Like, I had every credential that they were looking for. They found me, right? So I said no. And a few weeks later, I got a call, and they said, we've thought about it, and they actually did say they were sorry. They apologized and they said we want to bring you in as the chief financial officer. And we talked, and it's a good time to leverage your negotiation skills with them. But I had so much respect for this organization. The reality is, I can't say why they did that, or who in that group, or what the process was that led them to maybe make that change. But the fact that they were able to go back and rethink it, right? We talk about bias all the time. There isn't a single person or organization that doesn't have it. And I think it stemmed a little bit from bias. I don't look like your Silicon Valley CFO. And there may have been some concern. I didn't look the part. Could I do the part? And maybe that did influence them to change it. But the fact that they were willing to reverse that course and come back and do what I thought was the right thing, and give me the job with a little more money, I think speaks a lot about why the Warriors are who they are. The reality is, every organization needs to continue to grow, to iterate, to be better, to identify the things that they do that may need to change, because it is unconscious. I think it was unconscious. I know I have so much respect for the organization for having done that. I also know I gained a lot of respect for having stood my ground. And, I think every person, the lesson there is, you got to know what you're worth, and you got to be willing to ask for it, right? No one's just going to give it to you. And I think that's something that we as women need to do more of.
And do you think, since you've done that,
Yeah.
and now you've come in and obviously proven you're good at the job, it's given them more confidence to get rid of that unconscious bias as they've executed more hiring and brought more people?
Oh, absolutely. I think we as an organization have been really deliberate about looking for diversity, and not just around, the demographics of women or minorities. It's really around diversity of thought. I think we really love sort of the debate about where we want to be as an organization, and having people with different backgrounds and coming from different places is really important. I didn't come from sports, and I love the fact that they looked for somebody that didn't come from sports. When you look at other sports teams, people who get into sports are really passionate about it. And so they tend to stay within that industry. And so you have this sort of, you don't have diversity of thought, and you can see it in the way that they run their businesses. They don't look outside of their own industry. And so our senior management team, our ownership group, really looks to be diverse, because they want to be the best, and you can't be the best if you're only looking within or within your own space. I think we like to look outside of our own industry to really find the next practice.
Proof that Silicon Valley can learn new tricks. You've got owners from Silicon Valley, and they've built an incredible organization. So inspiring to hear.
Yeah.
Vivian, one of the things that you've said is, you think about the projects that you're going to work on. You consciously think about how that project's going to improve somebody's life and change the field that you're working in. Can you tell us about one of the projects and how you've woven that in?
One of the projects. It's like, which kid do you love the most? So, I do get to do a lot of different things. My lab and all of my companies before this have been about building better people. And so we get to work in education. In fact, if I may just say, one thing we found in our work, both in education and in workforce, is the phenomenal importance of role modeling. So, I'm not going to get political, but obviously everyone here knows that there is something that the mayor has done which is a strong statement, and it's drawn a lot of attention, hard attention. And it's amazing, and frankly, who her kids will be, and a lot of kids now in our community, will be a function of that kind of role modeling. And being that person is what actually makes a difference in someone's life. So we extend this sort of idea across a wide range. And I get to do collaborative research. In fact, with Accenture, we're looking at the future of work. I think one of the things that made me originally famous was some problems walk into my life. So my son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. I had no background in it, other than being a neuroscientist, broadly speaking. And I was just shocked at how diabetes is treated. Not that it was cruel, but it involved pieces of paper and people writing things down and just staring at it. And I thought, in my wild arrogance, you've got to be kidding me, right? I make models of the brain. Are you telling me diabetes is more complicated than the brain? So I hacked all of his devices. Turns out I broke several federal laws along the way, which I got to confess to.
You go, girl.
Yeah. I got to confess to in person at the White House to President Obama, which was so much fun. A huge geek. I was wearing Google Glass at the time, so my first words to the President of the United States was, "Okay, Glass, take a picture." Really did not improve his opinion of me. But I was getting real-time updates, predictive updates that predicted about an hour into the future whether my son's blood glucose levels are going high or low. And as a mom, like, that's my first identity. I'm a mom, then I'm a professional mad scientist, and then I'm a variety of other increasingly demented things. And to know that we built that, like when my son has a hard night, so we built that and gave it away, and we built things, systems to predict manic episodes in bipolar sufferers, and systems for autism, and to take bias out of hiring, and most of those we just gave away. And when he's having a hard night, which is, inevitable for a kid that also has a diagnosis of autism, is I get to remind him that because our family went through this, because we were strong and we just happened to be the right people in the right time, there might literally be millions of other people who will be alive as a result. And that is an incredibly powerful story to be able to share with your son. I wish everyone had the chance to share an experience, like to be that one person.
That's awesome.
That can make a difference in your child's life. And then you start thinking, well, how many other kids are out there like that? How many kids, we can keep it here, how many kids right in Oakland could be doing amazing things like I get to do, like we all get to do in this room, but they never had the chance. And that's how we make our decisions. It's never about whether there's a market. It's never about whether I think some VC will fund it. Most of what I do is philanthropic. It's because it has to happen. That's how you make a decision about how to make a difference in the world.
Love the passion. Thank you. So our clock is running down. Jennifer, I'll just ask you to wrap up. Any final advice you would give for people who are thinking about moving into a male-dominated world and maybe blazing a new path? Any thoughts?
Well, I always say, just find your voice, and be deliberate about it. Know what you want, say what you want, and then go for it.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Mayor Scharf?
There is never a perfect time to run for office. It does not exist. I try and encourage particularly women, but also people of color, anyone who is from a non-dominant identity, because we need to get more voices and perspectives and life experiences, particularly at the decision-making and policy-making table. And I always get like, oh, it's just not the right time. And I'm like, it's never going to be the right time. Be uncomfortable, put yourself out there, and it is amazing that you can make a difference.
Very inspirational. Thank you so much for joining us. Fantastic panel. Thank you very much.